Hey, welcome to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nembhard. Since I was a kid, I was told my conversations were way too deep. Well, now it's paying off. Join me and the names you know as we go deep into their personal stories of triumph, tragedy, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Friends, this crazy, overwhelming life we live calls for some serious encouragement and inspiration. So grab a cup of coffee and get your notebook because we're going into the classroom of life. So let's get lifted with faith-filled conversations. I'll see you on the path.
Watch in Canada on Yes TV and the Yes TV app, or watch on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Pioneer Network, Faith TV, and more in the US. Also watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel, brought to you by Compassion Canada.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On the Path. As you know, we are in the classroom of life. We are learning from incredible people, authors, celebrities, pastors, leaders in various fields, from athletes to singers and more. We are listening to their incredible life stories, all the life lessons they've learned, not in the shiny, glowy moments, but in the valley where it matters. I feel like so much has been shaped in those rough, hard seasons of life, and we have incredible storytellers with us. And let me tell you, when I say I have a friend in the building, I'm so excited, guys. Very rarely can I say I knew this person when, but I can do it right now with this one. You are going to be blown away by my next guest, who I've known for over 20 plus years. True story. Let me tell you a little bit about the force that is Mark Masri. Dr. Mark Masri is a Grammy and JUNO Award nominated Canadian tenor, songwriter, and producer. And as a member of the internationally acclaimed group, the Tenors, he blends classical technique with pop, soul, and inspirational music, creating a sound that transcends genres and heals hearts. I can tell you mine is one. Mark has performed worldwide, from Moscow with the Vivaldi Orchestra to David Foster's Hitman, and has shared the stage with the diva herself, Celine Dion, and so many others, Olivia Newton-John, Delta Goodrum, John Cicada, and more. And his albums are incredible on Universal Music Group, some like La Voice, Intimo, and Beating Heart. Beyond the stage, Mark is now stepping in as the Dean of Music at Canada Christian College. He's co-host as well of 100 Huntley Street, my alma mater and partner, and recipient of an honorary doctorate recognizing, well-deserved, his lifelong contributions to music. So whether he's in concert, classroom, television, wherever he is around the globe, he is blessing so many, not just with his music, but with his life. And I get to call him friend and brother from back in the day. Would you give a huge On the Path welcome to Mark Masri?
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. That is such a warm and seems super inflated introduction, but thank you.
Mark, before we move forward, we got to tell the people so they know I'm not making up stories and trying to inch my way in. How long would you say we've known each other?
Cheryl, I think it's longer than 20 years, and I know we're gonna give our we're gonna give our age away here a bit, but I've got to say it's probably closer to 35 years. If I do the math, yeah, It's got to be closer to 35 years. I think the first time I met you was wandering into a rehearsal at Melbourne Christian Assembly in Scarborough, Ontario. And you were assistant conductor for Toronto Mass Choir, one of the, yeah, the co-founding voices of that incredible choir. And I'm pretty sure you were soloing when I walked in, and it just blew my socks off. And I was just like, yes, whatever she's having, I will have as well. Thank you.
And did he have it? Let me tell you, that man came in and did solos and still does for gospel choirs. And what I love about you, Mark, is no matter what the genre, I'm going to say this because this is 100% true and we're going to go there. Not many people can switch genres and still crush it. We have had so many people try to come in the gospel space and backed by a wall of sound, which is a gospel choir, and just kind of like flailed. You, no matter where you are, that voice, my gosh, what a gift, Mark.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I can only attribute that to the fact that I've had so many profound influences throughout my musical journey that, and Do I do justice to every single one of those influences? I would argue maybe no, but I appreciate the fact that there are some genres, some worlds that I can walk into by the grace of God and connect on a heart level. And I think music is all about the heart connection at the end of the day. And especially gospel music, such a part of my formative years in music. Although I grew up with, sacred music at home and some of the sort of the traditional sort of, Christian contemporary music of the day. Gospel music was, I think, probably one of the most powerful influences on my musical journey. And fuse that with the classical influence of my piano training. It's made for kind of an interesting hybrid, if you will.
I love it, and it comes through the powerhouse, the sensitivity. You've got such a richness to your voice, but even more richer is your life and your life story and the lessons you've learned along the way. So I'd love to start here. I know you are very much a household name in Canada, but for those maybe streaming across the US and however they've landed here, let's do it like this. If your life, Mark, was a movie, what title would you give it and why?
Oh, Cheryl, we should give me warning on this question.
And not don't pick an existing movie, make your own.
Yeah.
Make your own. Yeah. What would you name your movie, your life movie?
The little, what is that? I want to reference that little childhood book, The Little Caboose That Couldn't.
Oh, The Little Engine That Could.
The Little Engine That Couldn't. Or that could, maybe,
That
by the
could,
grace of
yeah.
God. I'm the son of an immigrant father, and he met my mother, a Canadian woman, farm girl from Eastern Ontario. And so we had a very sort of humble home life and very just almost a meager existence at times. My dad was a pastor, so we all know that doesn't mean, loads of money, not at least in this country, and not certainly at the time that my dad was in the ministry. And there were, you could say, a lot of perhaps odds stacked against me just because we weren't the most affluent, influential family with the most, the highest level of connections and access. But there was a certain grace upon me, I guess, from a very young age. And I think it had a lot to do with the music side of things, of course, and a gifting that came at a very young age, was very evident at a young age. From even singing duets with my mother, because we were a bit of a novelty, because she could sing as well. She was a singer. And so the doors of opportunity would open just by virtue of the fact that I was this little boy that could sing harmony with his mother, and we would do the little church circuit in our community, in our region. And so that set the table, I think, for me, and planted the seed within me that this is something that you can do, that has impact, that lasts well beyond you stepping off the stage. And the power of music became very evident to me at a young age. I mean, and the fact that my mother says I could form tunes before I could even form words, I guess says something about the fact that it's at a DNA, it's at the, a DNA level with me. It was written into my genetic code by the grace of God. So, yeah, and yet, on the flip side, I wasn't the most extroverted kid. I was different. I didn't really fit in with the general masses of my peers. I always was a bit of a misfit, if I'm being honest. I was so plugged into church and faith, my faith, that it made me a little bit odd, I guess, if you will. And I wasn't the jock of my peers. I wasn't especially athletic. So that came with its own set of challenges. And so the fact that I'm still standing today, because I know there can be a lot of damage done when you come through a childhood that can be somewhat, traumatized by the interactions with your peers and by what others say about you at such a young age.
Yes.
I'd say it's nothing shy of a miracle that I was able to sort of push through that, and not that it doesn't have its moments where it rears its ugly head, but that I'm able to be here today and have been afforded the blessings and the opportunities and and the accolades that just in many respects I look back and I can't even see how it makes sense, but somehow it does in God's grand scheme.
And I'm so glad you said that, because it is a miracle, not just to you, but just for so many that have known you and have watched you, like myself, who have been cheering you on, pom poms out for over 30 years. I can't believe it's over 30 years. Faithfully, just like one of my most favorite people on the planet Earth. It is incredible to see what God is doing. Every time you think this is the highest level he can go, it just goes and goes. And then God just keeps doing these new iterations and new chapters and new seasons. But a little birdie told me that you actually were on the path to becoming a doctor. You were dead set on it, focused, serious about medicine. And then this switch. Tell me a little bit about what happened there, and what did God do to shift you from medicine to music?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was dead set on medicine. I was going down that journey in my studies. I was in the middle of my second year. Here was the impetus for that, just the decision to go after medicine. I felt like music came so naturally to me. And I'd had a number of opportunities up to the point where I had to make a decision what I was going to do in life. You know, that decision that comes with every person when you get through high school and you decide, I think this is what I want to study formally. And because music came somewhat easily to me, and I felt like perhaps the opportunities would be really scarce and probably not available, again, to a boy like me, from my upbringing, from sort of, the disposition of our family, not really knowing how to pursue music as a career, not really knowing how to make it a life profession. I felt like I was going to have a real job. And that was the honest conversation I was having with me. And next to music, sciences were always very much a passion of mine. So I decided to go after music or go after medicine. And I was still functioning in a music capacity. In fact, I was part-time music pastor at a church in Scarborough that we both know very well, that church where we first met. And we were having, great success with choir, and I was the principal worship leader and one of the principal musicians at the church. There wasn't a Sunday I wasn't on either the piano or the organ. There wasn't a Sunday that I wasn't leading worship. There wasn't a Sunday where the choir wasn't singing and flourishing and doing well. We were in a great season of productivity and influence in the community and in the church community specifically. But I was studying science until middle of second year. I lost one of my closest friends to a brain tumor, and I really felt in that moment I had this God voice that spoke to me. He spoke to me and he said, "Mark, you were created. You could do science. That's fine. There would be nothing wrong with you doing that. And thank God for our doctors and those that choose to go down that road. But he said, you were created to do this. You were created for music. You know the gifts that I've placed inside of you are for a greater purpose." And in that moment, I had to make the decision. And I withdrew from the program, my formal studies, and I threw myself into even more music with the church. And that gave me another season where I was able to develop further, and I was able to sink my teeth in a little bit more, if you will. And from that point on, it was like that making that decision, Cheryl, was the catalyst for all these other opportunities that would start to materialize and present themselves. And within a matter of 6 months, I was presented with the opportunity to come on board with Crossroads Communications, Christian Communications, and become the music producer for the flagship program, which is 100 Humber Street, which is, as you referenced in my intro, I now host the show. Yeah. But back in the day, for about 7 years, I was the music producer for the show. I was this young 23-year-old, 23 and a half, 24-year-old, whatever. Incredible. And I had this incredible weighty responsibility of making sure that we had live artists on the program. We were an hour format. We were live across the country. We were syndicated on mainstream television. We were on the global television network at the time. So it was like a big deal. Monday to Friday live television. I mean, that was talk about energy. and excitement and adrenaline, because
Yeah.
you can't take anything back. Once that red light goes on, you're live across the country.
Yeah.
And so I cut my teeth in production, if you will, television production, right there on the studio floor at the Crossroads Center in Burlington. So, and from
Wow.
that season came to a close. There was some shuffling going on. Leadership was changing. They were dissolving some portfolios. And so I was one of the portfolios that they dissolved, but I felt like God was moving me out of there at that season anyways, because I was actually working on my second album at the time, and
Right.
I was working with some mainstream producers, a guy by the name of Justin Gray, worked with a lot of big pop acts at the time. One JUNO nomination under my belt, working on the second album, which I felt was for, a broader audience, an audience outside of the church.
Right.
And, never compromising in my message, but certainly music that would have broader appeal. And then and so I thought, okay, I see your plan, God. I know what's happening here. I'm moving out of full-time employment. Now I'm going to be just music full-time. And the bottom fell out of the music industry. The bottom fell out, and it was crazy. All these plans and all of this positive press. I mean, because this album we were working on was getting incredible reviews. I was playing for A&R directors in New York and LA and in Toronto, and they were tabling deals and publishing deals like this, right when the likes of like Justin Timberlake went out on his own. So I was going to be like another label's response to Justin Timberlake. Yes. I was going to be there because labels often do that.
Right.
And then the bottom fell out, and all the music that we had written, they were all originals, crazy production. Everyone was super excited. I had the best entertainment lawyer in the country that was part of the production company that I was signed to. He signed Nelly Furtado, and then he went on to be the president of E1 in LA, like Chris Taylor.
And can I just say, as you're going through that, incredible, like sort of evolving life story, I want to just stay right there for a minute. Okay. You have this promise, God has spoken, you're seeing it seemingly come together. You're thinking, this is the dream. This is what's been put in my heart. And the bottom drops out. What are you thinking? How are you feeling about towards God and towards what God has told you? Was that a real defining crossroads moment for you?
That was the beginning of probably one of the darkest seasons of my life, if I'm being honest.
Tell me about that a little bit. Yeah.
And what was no coincidence was, as I left that role as a music producer, the very day that my severance came to an end was the very day that the 18-month production deal contract that I had been in, because I was working on this album and writing this album while I was still employed. And God would have it that it would come to a complete stop on the very same day. How is that even possible? I could have never, you could have never forecasted it. And that began this very, very dark journey. And I knew that God had told me to cut the rope. Like, I was asked to extend and give us another 6 months. We're going to make something happen. But I knew God was saying, no, I need you to hit pause right now. And so in that moment, although it was hard to say no and to walk away, I did. And it started this journey of really seeking my true identity and who I was when I wasn't making music. And that was a very hard thing for me, Cheryl, because up to that point, my whole identity was wrapped up in what I did to tickle the ears of people or to move the hearts of people. And now it's not that no one wanted to hear me, but I just didn't have the audience that I once had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in all of that, I should say, on a personal level, my wife and I are expecting our first son. We only have one. We were expecting Lucas at the time. So I'm also thinking about myself as a father, as a provider. What's going to happen now? Because I no longer have full-time employment. The career that was on this trajectory to take off and go into the stratosphere is now changed. That whole thing has been put on pause or on hold, I think, or maybe it's not going to happen at all. Maybe I misheard. Maybe I made the wrong decision. 8 years prior, not finishing my medical degree. But you are caused to pull away and to kind of go into this place of reflection and true soul searching and come to terms with who you are when you're not doing what you are created to do. And that's a tough journey, but I think it's one that we all have to go through. And then I realized that God didn't care about what Mark Masri did, even if it was for him. He didn't care what I did. He cared about who I was. And he had plans and purposes for me that were way better than I could have ever imagined. And it would be many, many years for me to realize, and for me to, I will call it, crawl out of that hole and to start to see forward traction again. Yeah. But I had to go to that place first.
Oh my gosh.
Before I could be propelled into the next season. And we know, the majority of growth happens below the surface, Cheryl, right? It's not when things look beautiful above the soil and the tree is sprouting and the flowers are blossoming. It's what's happening below the ground level, where roots are going deep. What's happening in the dark, that's where the seed germinates.
Yeah.
That's where real growth happens. So
I love this so much because it's so encouraging for anyone who has a dream, who feels like they're called to something, and what they have envisioned, the reality is nothing anywhere near that. What do you do when the dream you have is deferred or looks different, or when God says no or wait? Or the promise is it's not there. And I think you're a living testimony of what it means to trust God in the unknown. You've done that so many times, but I feel like that is a direct reflection of your faith. And I want to maybe ask you this. You are a son of a Pentecostal minister, a mom who did much worship ministry. How did that shape you? How does your faith sort of shape you, even for this global platform that you're on now?
Yeah, it was critical. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It established this foundational understanding that there is a God that loves you and wants to bless you, and that has a plan and a purpose for your life. And yet my parents were the kind of parents that were like, they weren't like, my mom wasn't a, what do they call her? A momager, like a manager trying to promote me or push me. She had 5 other children younger than me that she had to take care of. So after we started duetting, if you will, I went off and did music on my own for the most part because she just didn't have the time. But they always instilled within us the idea that God's got you, he's got a plan for you, and you've got to learn to trust him. And it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult. I've seen difficulties in their lives, their lives of ministry, and people coming, people going, people hurting them, people walking away, the betrayal, all that kind of stuff that can be a very stark reality in the lives of so many people that are committed to ministry work and pastoring. And so to see that lived out in them and to see them do that with grace, even when people hurt them, it taught me invaluable lessons. Does it make it easier when you're going through it for yourself? Not necessarily, but you will always go back to those early lessons that have been taught to you and life principles that have been modeled for you, that it's so much more important to live out a life of integrity, especially even in the secret when no one's looking. And that's a whole other podcast. But the reality is that if you make a decision to follow God, to be in relationship with him through Jesus, that it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, because we know Jesus tells us straight up, there will be trials. It's not going to be easy. But know that I've overcome the world, that I walk through those challenges and those trials with you. And so to learn that from a young age, even from the songs that I would find myself singing, I found myself living out those truths, living out the truth and bearing witness to that truth later on in life from songs that I've been singing for 15 years at that point, Cheryl.
I'm so glad you said that, because I want to talk about that, because you actually said in an interview that you strongly believe that music is like medicine, and it was sort of this idea of like I didn't go into legitimate sort of like scientific medicine, but what I do and the gift that God's given me, you have seen music heal, uplift, transform. Talk to me a little bit about how music has become this incredible call of God on your life, and how you've seen God use music in everything that you do.
Yeah, I mean, music is one of those universal languages that tears down walls, and it can, and I mean this in a positive way. It disarms people. So if they've got defenses up to a message, to something that's trying to be communicated to them, when music gets involved, it tears down those defenses and brings down walls so that they're willing to hear the message and allow the message to penetrate their heart. And so oftentimes, I will say this, oftentimes, when people are asking me about, I've recorded in, I think it's 6 different languages, not entire albums, but I've recorded in 6 different languages. Italian being of my favorite to record in because of all the big, beautiful, open vowels. They call it bel canto. And oftentimes I'll tell audiences when I'm singing a song in Italian, even if you can't understand the lyric, there will be an emotional connection to the song that you will make just by virtue of the sounds of the vowels or where the melody carries you. Just close your eyes and take in the message that is there for you in that moment. Because the one that's delivering that message has a much bigger job than just to sing notes and lyrics. They have a job to communicate a message, and it'll be through the nonverbal cues, it'll be through the inflection of the voice, it'll be through the emotion that you wear on your heart, we talk about wearing it on your sleeve. And I see that, and then we talk about that, we couple that with now the desire to see people worship God, and then you create songs, you write songs, you're part of leading worship, where the songs are directed vertically. And there is just an undeniable power that comes with that, to actually heal people right where they're at, to tear down walls, to break shackles off of people that are walking through any kind of bondage or addiction, to actually see people physically healed. You wouldn't believe the countless messages that I get or DMs that I'll get, even when I'm on the road with the Tenors now. And I will tell people straight up, like the Tenors, we maybe do music that kind of feels like it's faith-centric, but we're not a Christian, quote-unquote Christian band. We're a pop classical band that has had many, many opportunities to travel the world and sing for some pretty incredible people. But they will get the spirit from which I sing, and I'll get messages. You maybe didn't intend the song to come across that way, but I could just see the joy of God in on your face and your countenance. I've had one lady come up to us at the end of a Christmas show, and she said, I could literally see Jesus looking down over the stage and smiling from ear to ear. And you know what's interesting, Cheryl? Every night I'm out on the road with those guys, I pray that we will sense the pleasure of God when we sing. Whether we're singing an Italian opera, or we're singing a song that says lead with your heart, or we're singing a Bob Dylan cover called Forever Young, that we will sense the pleasure of God, because God loves the creative gifts that he's poured into his children. And so oftentimes, and I'm sorry, I've even been guilty of it, we limit the ways in which God expresses his creativity, because we want it to look a certain way, we want it to sound a certain way, it's got to have a certain number of Jesus counts in terms of words in the lyric in order for it to be glorifying to God, and that's just simply not true. And you have to live a little, and I think experience a little to understand that truth. And for those that are on the journey, just keep walking that road, because it's powerful, and it never disappoints,
Mark, I love this moment for you, because I feel like you are at a place where it's far beyond the music now. You are teaching from literal life lessons, things you have gone through. You're at that sort of professor literally moment of like, here's what I've learned. This is something to take with you on the journey. And I wonder, you've had a lot of highs, you've had some lows. I love the phrase, the bottom has dropped out a couple of times. How did you navigate those unknown periods? And what would you say to someone who's in a season of unknown? Like, what is God doing?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
You really have to take hold of what you know to be true when there's a lot of uncertainty swirling around. And that might only be a couple of very simple truths. That, for me, it was that God is faithful, and that I'm only in this season of drought for a period of time. It's not going to be my forever. And there are enough references, whether you look to scripture or even if I look at my own life, where I could look back and I can say, you didn't leave me stuck there, God. So I know that if I'm in a new season of feeling stuck, you're just doing something in me that needs to be done. And so I'll sit here, I'll wait through it. I might gripe a little bit and complain, but that's just my humanness. But I know that you're going to move me through it because you're faithful. You're not a God that you can lie. And I've seen your faithfulness in the past. So why would you change? Because he doesn't. It's a rhetorical question. He doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so that's what I would say to anyone. Focus on the things that you know to be true. And like I said, it might not be a lot, but there are a few foundational truths that you understand and you've come to appreciate and hold on to, and those will be the things that carry you through. Because even coming out of that season, when like the bottom fell, I mean the first sort of big sort of fallout in terms of my career, as I managed to come out of that and see God open doors, and writing one song for a children's charity led to an opportunity that would precipitate 3 or 4 albums for me. Just totally a God relationship. And then from that would lead me to touring with some, U.S. acts and broadening my exposure and having all of these other experiences. And then all of a sudden, feel like you've reached sort of the pinnacle, at least on that particular run, have a PBS special that's relatively successful across the U.S., and then everything going quiet again and getting really, limited in terms of opportunities. Part of it is understanding that in the music business, there are cycles and things are cyclical, and sometimes you just need to wait it out and find yourself busy doing other things. Or it might be a season where you need to start creating again, or going back into the lab to write and to develop the next sort of sound or the next theme that you feel like God is birthing through you. And one thing I found too, Cheryl, is that, and I may be getting totally off course from the original question.
No, I love this so much.
But it's oftentimes we're not smart enough to know when we need to take a break and we need to hit pause. And sometimes God just steps in and said, okay, you've been going hard long enough. It's time to just take a bit of a break. You need to be home. Your family needs you. It might even be that. Like your family actually needs to see you a little bit more. So I'm bringing you home for a season. And we might take that as, well, God, why are you closing doors? Why aren't there opportunities that why do I feel like our opportunities are drying up? Or why do I feel like I'm not being fruitful? The fruit is maybe what you need to be investing in your family. And that's where you need to see fruit. And that's where you need to focus your time and be a little more intentional. And I've also had those seasons in life too, where I was so busy and so caught up with what was happening in the career that my family suffered. And so you have to always take a step back and look at what's going on, what's happened in the past, where you find yourself at present, and why you feel like maybe there are these seasons of drought, or sometimes I call it the silence of God. And that's another. So that's another podcast. But
what I love about you is you keep dropping these nuggets that are literally like entire podcasts by themselves. You are forever teaching, you're forever pouring out. I look at your life and you have definitely navigated the unknown, and you are truly on the other side. You are traveling around the world, literally, with one of the premier sort of pop classical groups ever known, the Tenors. I want to, I've seen from a distance some of these incredible live events to the tunes of thousands upon that, just high thousands, cathedrals, just picturesque, otherworldly type events. And then you come home. You come home to, your local place, and we won't say the name, but just your local town, and serve in your local church. And I've always wanted to ask you this, Mark. You're one of the most grounded, centered people I know. How do you come off of moments like that and just sort of become this servant. Where did that humility come from? And what is that tension with fame and faith that you navigate all the time?
Yeah, it's fun. It's a really good way to keep grounded is have a wife that keeps you grounded. And I do. The love of my life, Angela, we've been married 27 years this year. And that's no small feat. And that has got, that's been just laced with miracles every step of the way, how God has made our marriage what it is today, and not without its challenges like any marriage, any relationship. But I've got a wife that when I come home from touring, it doesn't matter if I've been performing at Royal Albert Hall or I've been doing a private event for Bill Gates with the Tenors. Wednesday morning is garbage morning, so make sure it's at the curb. And oh, by the way, the dog needs a bath. And would you mind vacuuming because I want to mop the floor tonight. And so that's life. And I love it. Like I love it. I mean, there may have been a little bit of resistance early days, but now at this stage of my life, I'm so thankful to have that. And it keeps it real and it keeps you grounded. And the connection to my local community and my church community as well is so grounding, because when you walk into the room on Sunday morning, if that's the day that your church gathers to worship, the playing field is level. We're all God's children. We're all here to do one thing, and that's to worship Him. There's no one that has any higher standing with God. And when we can wrap our heads around that, even when you have the opportunity to step on a big stage, I am no different than anyone else that's in that room. I am no different than the person that maybe has, paid a lot of money or flown across the country to come and hear you play a show. I'm no different than them. They might look to you differently, but at the end of the day, when you have the chance to, shake their hand or give them a hug or hear their story, to me, that's what it's all about. And like I mentioned earlier on, like to get the DMs or the messages from people where their lives have been impacted because of something that you said. I had one lady. I don't even like calling them fans, if I'm being honest, Cheryl. She's a friend now. I've known her for years. And she came to one of our shows out west. We were playing with the Symphony in Calgary. And she's from Ontario here. And she, for those of you that are listening around the world, that's a big distance from Ontario to Alberta. And she came up to me, and it was actually, and this is the beautiful thing about how God works too, because I don't even know if we can get into all this, but how my worlds have collided. Now, hosting a faith-based show like 100 Huntley Street, touring the world with the Tenors, being able to be here as Dean of Music here at the college. Wow. How all of these worlds collide is like mind-blowing. And I could have never packaged my life in this way if I had tried, Cheryl. I could have never imagined that it would come together as it has, like it has now. And it may change, and I'm fine with that. I'm so cool with it, because as you get down the road, you become a lot more, I think it gets easier. Change comes a little more easily. But she came up to me, she said, I was watching you guys were doing a show on addiction on Huntley Street. And she goes, I held up my phone, and she goes, and I recorded you praying for people battling addiction. She said, because my son is dealing with addiction. And I listen to that prayer every single day. And like it moves me to tears to hear these stories, because here I think she's there for the music, but she's not there for the music. She's there for the hug. She's maybe there for the music, but she's there for the hug and just that personal moment to share with you the impact that you're having, even off the stage. Is like, man, if we really just surrender everything that we have, and all of our gifts and abilities and platforms and all of it, there's no telling what God will do with it. But it starts with surrender. And I mean, this is another part of my story. For so long, I held it very close, very tightly. I felt like I needed to protect it, protect the gift, protect, the type of exposure that I would do, what kind of interview I would do, what kind of platform I would sing on. I felt like I held it so tightly, I think I even felt like I needed to protect it from God in case, he might do something to mess it up. Wow. Ridiculous notion. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was really willing to say, you know what? And this was the latest season that I came through, just before, about 2 years before the Tenors. I'd gotten to the place where I really just said, God, if I never, ever get on the stage in the capacity of a professional again, I am so good with it. Because I'd almost lost my family at that point. I was striving. I was grasping at straws. I was trying to make
You were chasing.
Pardon?
You were chasing.
I was chasing. I was trying to make a round peg fit in a square hole, as the expression goes. Or maybe it's the opposite, but you know the point. And I got to that point where I just had to honestly say, if I never grace the stage, I'm so blessed up to this point for the opportunities that I've had. And if this voice that you've given me is to simply bring you praise in the context of worship, in a community of other believers, I'm cool with it. I am so okay with it. And I had honestly gotten to that place.
Wow.
And it was when I was willing to let it all go, Huntley Street opened up. I became a host of the show. And then 2 years later, the Tenors thing presented itself. And I can tell you, if tomorrow it all goes away, you will never find a man that's happier and more content, because I know there's another plan and purpose at work.
Mark, I needed to hear that personally, and I know I'm not alone. For those that are listening and watching and however they're sort of digesting this conversation, I've heard this so many times before, so there is something to this. I really hope that you're leaning in, guys. It is when you're willing to surrender it all that it happens. When we chase it, when we desire it more than other things, when we want it more than family and faith in our relationship, when those things are at the altar of sacrifice to that thing, that it never happens. And it's when you're like, you know what? God right-sized this whole thing, and these kind of statements, if it never happens, it's me and you. I'm good, God.
Yeah.
Boom. Every time I've heard that in different things. And, I'm so thankful for you. And Mark, thank you for taking the time. Even today, I've got to have you back because your life story is so big. The lessons are so big. I've got like a question and a half, I think, left. I'd love to, I just want to hold you hostage, but it would be cruel. It wouldn't be kind. We don't have food here. I can't keep you here for hours. But I always say this. This is sort of a signature question for every guest. I'm a firm believer that storms, as we've been talking about, are our greatest teachers. It's really what we learn in the hard, rough, sort of back against the wall moments that shape our character and teach us life lessons, change who we are. I wonder, what have the rock bottom moments of your life, Mark, taught you about God, taught you about Mark? What did you learn about yourself? And what did you learn about the community around you in those crisis moments?
Well, I know I learned that God was no more concerned with what I did for him than, let me rephrase that. I learned that God was way more concerned with who I was as one of his children than anything I could possibly do. And that even includes do for him. And so oftentimes, because we can place our value and our worth in what, especially in Christian circles, we place our worth in what we do for God. And that can take the place of knowing who we are in him, regardless of what we do. And I learned that God loved me as his son, Mark. End of full stop. That's it. So I don't care, Mark, what you do for a living. I don't care if you ever sing again. I don't care if you're a waste management person. I don't care if you're a waiter, you're a barista. Whatever, an accountant. Whatever. I love you for you. Full stop.
Wow.
What did I learn about Mark? What have I learned? That I continue to need to bring my brokenness before God.
Wow.
Because that's the only place where wholeness is found. And it's remarkable how he has taken the broken pieces of my life and has put me back together in such a way that his glory can shine through the cracks. And so it's not a perfect piece of pottery. It's actually a fragmented piece of pottery, but it's been put back together in such a way that I am whole and I'm functional, but God's glory shines through the cracks and through my imperfections. And as I get older, I've become more comfortable with being that way. And for so long, I felt like it needs to be perfect. It needs to be polished. It needs to be this. It needs to be that. And I'm realizing that God works through our imperfections, and talking about, the Apostle Paul talks about his strength being made perfect in our weakness. I kind of feel like that's what God was talking about. Bring me your weakness and I'll show you perfection.
Man, we have been speaking with the one and only Mark Masri, my dear friend, Dr. Mark Masri now. My gosh, I love it. Grammy and JUNO Award nominated Canadian tenor songwriter producer. I want to ask you, and part of the powerhouse team that is the Tenors. What are you excited about? What's coming down the pipe that we can get excited about or look forward to from you?
Yeah, it actually is a really exciting season for us. It's been a little bit daunting because we're working with Emilio Estefan, who is like the Latin hit maker, Gloria Estefan's husband.
Husband, yes.
And she's like the queen of Latin music. We've been recording a Spanish album for the last year, and we just finished it. And so in the new year, be looking for the first ever full Spanish Latin record, which is super, super exciting, very daunting, and but a beautiful language to sing in. Spanish is such a musical language. So we are really excited about that.
I cannot wait for that to happen. Hopefully you can put my name in the hat for an interview. I'd love to have a couple of questions with you guys. Listen, as we go, I always love to ask this. It's a little bit of a bonus. I know you're good for it. It's off script. A bonus question. I ask this every time I close, and the answer is always completely different, Mark. In light of our conversation, just sort of your life lessons, all the things you've been sharing that you've learned, some really big nuggets you gave us. Finish this sentence. What is it time for, Mark? What is it time for?
It's time for us to really love each other. It's time for us to really love each other as Jesus modeled love, without pride, prejudice, preconceived notions, without judgment, but love as Jesus loved. And that's what's going to change the world. Because there's a lot of division. There's a lot of things that are even dividing us as followers of Jesus. And it really hurts. I think if we were being honest as followers of Jesus, if we just took a step back and look at the state of affairs, it would break our heart. And I think if our hearts were broken by the things that breaks God's heart, we would realize that the key is love. We're lacking in that area. And that would be that's what I think I need to do more of, and I need to do it better.
Well, Mark, from a distance, you are doing a pretty bang up job, and thank you for reflecting the heart of God in everything you do, in every area, in every sort of sphere that God has brought you in. You have never compromised. You've just always been this beautiful reflection of God's love and compassion, and I'm so honored to call you friend. Thank you for being on the path today.
My pleasure, Cheryl. I love you as a sister, and really an honor and a privilege to be with you today.
Thank you for listening to On the Path with Cheryl Nembhard, brought to you by Compassion Canada.